Hey there, Jordan Sheridan. It is Tuesday, April 24th. What an eventful news day, news weekend that is currently going on. I was actually away the last few days, so I missed most of the fun of the last few days over the weekend. Quite a lot of news, particularly actually in the progressive space. You had CNN apparently going after progressives now. They went after Jimmy Dore, of all people, who they think is a conspiracy theorist. So I will be talking about that later.
Now,
Hold on.
After Jimmy
Whoop.
Dore.
I will be talking about that later because around 5 o'clock Eastern, I'll be going live to talk about, oh boy, I'm going to talk about CNN calling Jimmy Dore a far left conspiracy theorist for the conspiracy that Assad didn't gas his people, which there's still no evidence for, so that makes him a conspiracy theorist. We're going to talk about that a little later. Also going to talk about, I'm still finding it kind of hard to believe, but the DNC is now suing the Russian government, I believe it is, the Trump campaign, as well as WikiLeaks for threatening our democracy. So I got a lot to discuss on that account. Also, the Saudi Arabia bombed a wedding in Yemen. By my last count, between 30 and 40 were killed. You don't see the same outcry on CNN, MSNBC, and the New York Times, the fact that Saudi Arabia bombed a wedding in Yemen, killing mostly innocent civilians. And who's supplying Saudi Arabia with their weapons? And who's refueling Saudi Arabian jets in their genocide of Yemen? That would be the United States. So we're going to talk about that. Just a lot to talk about later. So again, I'll be live twice today. But this live stream is to let you know exciting news. If you don't know, I've actually been working on a book for the last, I'd say, almost a year now. And I wanted to do the book a little bit differently. I wanted to write it in real time and release the chapters in real time. So every time I finish a chapter, soon after that, I'll be releasing them online, one chapter at a time. Instead of waiting to write a whole full book and get a publisher and all those things. Frankly, when I was at the Young Turks, I never really had the time to write a full book. I just kind of wrote when I had time in between 25 other things. And right now I'm trying to launch a media network, as you know, so I haven't had full time to just sit down and hammer out a whole book. So chapter 7 of my book, Corporate Con Job. Again, the book is called Corporate Con Job, How the Mainstream Media Aids the Oligarchy. And we just released chapter 7. Chapter 7 is titled Standing Rock, America's Fascist Takeover. Obviously, the events that I describe in the book were going on 2 years later, but I still think they're as relevant as ever. Chapter 6 of the book was also on Standing Rock, so I've done 2 chapters on Standing Rock because it's that important of a story, and to me, it's not just about Standing Rock and what happened there, but it's about the face of fascism in a supposedly democratic country. Fascism has many definitions. Some on Twitter have not liked when I describe what happened at Standing Rock as fascism because to them, fascism means, Adolf Hitler and Auschwitz and gas chambers. I'm Jewish, so obviously I understand that grisly, horrific, just inhumane evil that went on in Germany and other places where genocide has happened. However, there are different forms of fascism. And I think what you're seeing in the United States is the definition of a corporate-backed fascism. Because remember, and it wasn't covered by the mainstream media, and a lot of this book is actually about the corporate media. I used to work at MSNBC. I used to work at Fox News. I used to work for corporate-owned digital websites where I wrote. So I understand how the corporate media works. And really what you had at Standing Rock, even though it was not covered at all, really, in corporate media, was publicly funded police. So the police are paid by North Dakota, taxpayers, as well as overall all over the United States, by the citizens. That's who pays the public police. And what you had in North Dakota was the public police department working at the behest of a private oil company. And when I say working, I don't mean just like putting up roadblocks in front of the pipeline. I mean literally brutalizing Native Americans and environmental activists basically for 9 months to a year. Brutalizing with grenades, brutalizing with pepper spray, brutalizing with freezing water in sub-zero temperatures, brutalizing with rubber bullets, which, make no mistake, if you get shot with a rubber bullet at close range, it's not like a non-lethal weapon. You can get killed by a rubber bullet. Do the research. I have. One gentleman, which I show the awful picture in this chapter, literally had his scalp nearly shot off because he had a rubber bullet shot so close to him. A young woman, 21-year-old, had to have her arm nearly amputated. She now has a makeshift fake arm with all parts from the rest of her body to have some semblance of an arm. That was a 21-year-old girl. You also had a native woman that I describe in the chapter. Vanessa Dundone is her name. She's an indigenous woman. Tear gas canister shot at her from point blank range. Point blank range. She lost eyesight in her left eye. Those are just some of the injuries that took place at Standing Rock. But what I hope this chapter really does and shows you is a lot of the things that went on that you don't know about. You know, I was at Standing Rock 7 times. I went back and forth, kind of like in the home stretch of the campaign, covering the final weeks of the campaign. So I would go from rallies in New Hampshire and Ohio and in Michigan, flying back to North Dakota. And it was always so amazing to me, kind of in an unsettling way, the alternative reality that was going on at the time. Because when you would be at rallies covering Trump or Hillary Clinton at the time, because it was the general election, the things that the corporate media were focusing on, the things at the rallies that were being focused on were kind of not very important. A lot of it was kind of like Trump's tweets and the chaos of those final weeks of the campaign. When I would return to North Dakota, in the same week, I'd literally be, at a small island where Native Americans are trying to pray as they're getting shot at by police. So what was actually happening in America versus what the corporate media was covering were two very, very different realities. But I hope you'll download this chapter. If you're not yet a Patreon, you could get all the chapters at patreon.com/Jordan Chariton. Just to be clear, I have 2 separate Patreon platforms. So I have a Patreon for my book, Corporate Con Job. I have a separate Patreon just for my daily reporting, which includes my podcasts, my video diaries, all that good stuff. So some people have subscribed to both. Can't thank you guys enough who do that. Some people, only subscribe to one, whatever you want to do. If you'd like to read chapter 7, which I'm about to read a little part of it, so you could kind of see, get a little taste for the chapter, you go right now, subscribe at patreon.com/Jordan Chariton. You could subscribe as low as $1 per chapter, $2 per chapter, $5 per chapter, whatever you want to do. And you'll get access to the introduction. You'll get access to chapters 1 through 6, as well as this brand new chapter, chapter 7, which is all about the fascism that took place at Standing Rock, where I think I kind of do a little bit of both. I show you the personal account of what happened and all the things I was dealing with on the ground there and how it affected me, along with some of the other things that happened there that you might not know happened, because a lot of this stuff happens behind the scenes and viewers don't get to see it. So I want to read you a little snippet. And again, you could read the whole thing at patreon.com/Jordan Chariton. Let me get it up for you here. What will be, will be. Here we go. So, Standing Rock, America's fascist takeover. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. I never had interest in reporting on the front lines of war, because most wars are based on religious zealots and corrupt oligarchs risking other people's lives to serve their masters and gods. Why the fuck would I risk my life covering the pinnacle of evil and fraudulence brought to you by Raytheon and Boeing when no one should be there in the first place? But as my feet sank into the mud and shots fired around me on a frigid November day in North Dakota, war had come to me anyway. Oil police had lined up as if a bunch of Al-Qaeda terrorists were rushing them with Uzis. In reality, unarmed Native Americans were swimming in a frozen body of water, trying to cross the blockade that was stopping them from reaching their ancestors' burial ground atop a small hill. "Keep your places, stand your ground," an elder yelled as he walked around dozens of water protectors sprawled out on the ground, squinting from the burning of pepper spray stinging their eyes. In front of me, I could see water protectors in the frigid water, holding their hands straight up, only to receive a point-blank range shot of pepper spray to their faces, from militarized police anyway. Hired guns who seemed to take pleasure in the brutality they were unleashing on other humans, peaceful humans. Another cloud of suffocating pepper spray slid off the water, covering water protectors who were in pain but unyielding on their own land, in defense of the water that served millions. "You're trespassing on native land," a female native screamed behind me towards the oil police as several of them spread out up and down the hill, a hill that they weren't even supposed to be on since it was Army Corps land that the natives had permission to be on, while the oil police did not. I was moving around as quickly as I could, trying to avoid getting hit with rubber bullets or mace myself. I didn't want to get hurt, but more importantly, I didn't want to go down and miss anything because of temporary blindness or rubber bullets hitting me. I was determined to capture this terrible moment. People had to see what was going on, as it had to be stopped. "I've never seen anything like this," award-winning documentarian Josh Fox told me as shots and pepper spray continued to flare. "I feel like I'm watching the salt mine protests with Gandhi. These people are in the water. They're freezing to death. This water is not warm. This is freezing water. And they're being maced on the front lines and they're not backing down." I remember freezing the frame around me in my mind at one point, even though everything was already moving in slow motion. I knew I'd want to remember this moment for the rest of my life, especially when confronted with corporate media, quote, journalists, who simply repeat what the PR company for Energy Transfer Partners tells them to say. I had to remember it forever. It mattered. Where I stood in America at that moment, police were gassing unarmed citizens for trying to pray. Again, where I stood in America, police were gassing unarmed citizens for trying to pray. I emphasize that line because that is not normal. It's evil. It's what we'd see in fascist countries with authoritarian dictators drunk on delusions of grandeur and psychopathy. These dictators terrorize their people through police and military force, often in service to corporate power. But as I stood there, I realized more than ever before that this un-American fascist treachery was happening out in the open, and not for the first time, under a supposedly progressive president. "The police are committing genocide," a native woman screamed on a megaphone as the water police continued to deploy mace on frozen water protectors who had their hands hoisted up. Another native man pointed to the sniper atop the hill, pointing out that he wasn't only holding rubber bullets. In the next instant, the slow motion speed of the moment moved to warp speed as I saw people rushing in a flurry of terror to a young man who had blood streaming down his face. He'd been shot in the face with a rubber bullet. I later learned that rubber bullets don't just hurt you. They don't cause injury, they could actually kill you. If the Army Corps is giving them permission to use force against us, the president needs to step in and intervene right now, today. Where are you, President Obama, and why aren't you here protecting your people? He pleaded as the blood continued to pour. In a sickening twist of irony, just 2 days earlier, our faux progressive savior of a president said, quote, He let it play out for several more weeks to see if this could be resolved in a way that honored the first Americans. He also called it a challenging situation in response to oil goons masquerading as public police, terrorizing unarmed demonstrators. How's that for hope and change? Maybe the now former president has a different interpretation of the word honor than the rest of us. There's no honor in an oil company choosing to dump a toxic pipeline on impoverished native land rather than risk the water and health of wealthier white folk. I'm going to stop right there. That is just the first, that's literally just the first 3 pages of the whole chapter. And I think if you download the chapter, which to download, you'll have to become a patron. Again, the book Patreon is patreon.com/Jordan Chariton. It's patreon.com/Jordan Chariton. You could go there right now for $1 per chapter, for $2 per chapter, for $5 per chapter, whatever you would like to leave. You could read the whole chapter. And why I think it's important, by the way, the funds I'm raising from my book Patreon are going directly to launching the media network that I've been talking about here on this YouTube channel for weeks now. We are launching a media network. The name, if you don't know, where have you been? The name is Status Coup, as you see right in front of you, the logo. We're launching a media network, so we're trying to build up my book Patreon. We're trying to build up my separate reporting Patreon so that we can get the funds to hire a cameraman, to get that one-time equipment that we need, cameras and other things, get a travel budget and get going, get back on the road and cover all the things that corporate media won't touch and for, frankly, a lot of other independent media are not really covering in depth. And why I hope you'll read this chapter is because even though Standing Rock happened 2 years ago, we're still seeing what these oil companies and the police that protect them are doing all around this country. There are pipelines being built right now on native land, on poor people's land, on minorities people's land, even in wealthier areas, that even before they are fully operational, there are insane amounts of spills before the pipeline even gets going. For example, Energy Transfer Partners, who is the parent company of the Dakota Access Pipeline, is also the parent company of the Rover Pipeline. The Rover Pipeline is going through Ohio and some other states. Well, the Rover Pipeline, before it's even operational, has spilled over 20 times. You have the Trans-Pecos Pipeline in Texas, has spilled many times. You have other pipelines from Energy Transfer Partners, Sunoco Logistics. It just came out that the Keystone, the Keystone pipeline, which Trump has greenlit to basically be rebuilt, the Keystone pipeline, there was a massive spill. Well, it was reported months ago how many gallons spilled. It just came out that literally double the amount of gallons that were originally reported were spilled at the Keystone pipeline. Dakota Access Pipeline, which is fully operational now, literally has spilled 5 times that we know of. I always say 5 times that we know of because the North Dakota, Texas, these states, they do not report all their oil spills. And a lot of times they'll report it as, you know, X amount of gallons spilled as a small spill when a lot more gallons were spilled. But frankly, government regulations on the oil companies, pretty damn light. So they don't really have to thoroughly investigate or report just how much was actually spilled. And the very bodies that are supposed to regulate them, frankly, work for the oil companies. Because that's what fascism is, book. Laura Wertenberger says, Jordan, is the entire book as one unit as opposed to individual chapters available for download for patrons? That is a terrific, terrific question. Well, we are going to be starting to release paperback editions. Right now, we are dealing with a whole lot of stuff to try and launch this company. So it's not coming tomorrow, but we are going to be releasing paperback editions of the book I think it's if you are on my reporting Patreon. Again, just to be clear, the Corporate Con Job, my book, has its own Patreon, patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan, and my reporting Patreon has a separate Patreon. That's patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. We are going to be releasing paperback copies on my reporting Patreon a little bit down the road. So yes, it will come out. I think we're probably going to release 2 editions. We haven't finalized it yet because we're dealing with a whole lot of other stuff trying to launch this business. Let me tell you, launching a business, a lot of stuff you got to deal with. So yes, we will be doing paperback at some point, but not right now. So if you want to read this chapter like right now, you got to go patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan. Like I said, you could subscribe per chapter as low as $1 per chapter. But why I think it's super important is unless you truly are armed with the facts and exactly what happened, including all the gory details behind the scenes at Standing Rock, unless you truly know what happened, you're not going to be able to fight this kind of fascism if you're not well informed of the whole scope of what happened. I'm not going to lie to you. If you are a water protector who went down to Standing Rock, if you are someone who didn't go down to Standing Rock, but you were one of those keyboard warriors who was supporting the water protectors, this chapter, it's not something that's going to make you smile. It's definitely raw, it's definitely authentic, and it definitely might trigger some of the stuff you dealt with if you went down to Standing Rock. Even if you didn't go down to Standing Rock, it's very authentic because I was there 7 times, and I probably saw a lot more than most journalists that were there saw. I mean, sometimes I was there weeks at a time. So it's definitely raw, authentic, unsettling in certain points. So, definitely know what you're getting into when you read it. But I think it's important, an important kind of account of history. You're not going to ever see you will see documentaries on CNN about Russia. You won't see documentaries about Standing Rock in the corporate media. So this is I think one of the more full and comprehensive accounts of what happened. So that's one excerpt. I read it for you. I hope you'll download the chapter. I hope you'll become a Patreon for the book. I hope you'll tell other people that are environmental activists, that might be people who went down to Standing Rock. Get the word out. We want to not only get people to read this, we also want, through your support, to get this company going. So every last dollar you subscribe at, every last dollar you pledge for this book, for my reporting channel, is being used to get back in the field. I'm hungry to get back in the field. We want to go out and we want to cover future Standing Rock type stories before it's too late. We want to cover it while there's still time to inform the masses so the masses can take action to stop these planet-destroying pipelines. Thank you for watching. Once again, it's patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. Here's the page so you know what you're looking for. Right now we have 398 patrons for the book, and we'd love to get that up closer to 450, 500, and beyond. And again, the money that's coming in per chapter ain't being used so I could go out for a fancy dinner. We're using these funds, we're using this support to try and get back in the field and launch a media revolution, more specifically, to launch status coup. Thank you for watching. I will be back around 5 o'clock Eastern for a live stream on the news of the day, and boy, is there a lot of news. I'll see you at 5 o'clock Eastern. Peace.